What does Du Bois' choice of audience reveal about his purpose? In this lesson, you will learn how to determine an author's purpose by considering his choice of audience. So now we've already read the text, The Souls of Black Folk Are Spiritual Strivings, once. And we know that good readers know that an author starts with his audience in mind. And the author will shape his or her argument based on who he or she is addressing. Before an author even begins, he or she may ask, what are my audience's expectations? What do they know or need to know? What are their opinions and objections about my subject? When an author is crafting an argument, determining one's audience is especially important because good writers will speak to the concerns of the people they're addressing. Now, one mistake some readers make is to think that they are the author's only intended audience. But when we read literature, we really have to consider who was this author trying to convince and what time were they, period were they writing in. So we're going to reread the text closely, paying attention to the words and phrases, and ask ourselves, who is the author's audience? Why does he want to persuade this group? So to do that, we're going to note the pronouns and phrases where the audience is addressed. And then we're going to ask, who is the author addressing? And then finally, we're going to ask, why would the author choose to address this audience? So we're going to look at the beginning of a passage from the beginning of the piece because that's often where a writer will start to address their audience or set up who their audience is. And we're going to look for phrases and pronouns. Remember, pronouns are words like I, me, you, somebody, they, any word that takes the place of a proper name. So right away I see one. Between me and the other world there is ever an unasked question. All nevertheless flutter around it. They approach me in a half-hesitant sort of way, eye me curiously or compassionately, and then, instead of saying directly, how does it feel to be a problem, they say, I know an excellent colored man in my town, or I fought at Mechanicsville, or do not these southern outrages make your blood boil? Okay, so let's look again here in the call of action towards the end of the piece when he's actually, again, addressing the audience. The training of the schools we need today more than ever, the training of deft hands, quick eyes and ears, and above all the broader, deeper, higher culture of gifted minds and pure hearts. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense, else what shall save us from second slavery? So in here, I need to ask myself, who is the author addressing? The first phrase says, between me and the other world. So we know the author feels separated from the world of his audience. They approach me shows the audience doesn't know how to approach the author. So I'm going to pause here and look at the clues I have so far. I know that the audience is different from the author. The author feels separated from the world of his audience, and they feel uncomfortable approaching him. So who could that be? I think it's probably a white audience that he's talking about in this particular passage when he talks about me in the other world and someone who's having a hard time approaching the author is probably a white audience. And let's look here some more clues for us. I fought at Mechanicsville and talking about these southern outrages making your blood boil. So I know the audience is probably white because they fought for freedom in a Civil War battle, and they're angry about what is happening in the South. So it's got to be a sympathetic kind of white audience. We know Mechanicsville because of the time period that this was written, 1903. What would be a battle that they would have? What would be a battle that someone fought in that for freedom in the Civil War? They would be on the side of the North. And if they were angry about the South, we know they're probably part of the North. So I think these are all logical conclusions. Let's look at this next section, because is this the only audience? often a writer will address more than one group of people. So we're looking at we, what shall save us from second slavery? So let's ask ourselves, who is he including in we? Who would these statements most appeal to? I think that this audience is probably black, like Du Bois, because he uses the pronouns we and us. Talk about what will save us from a second slavery. He's already gone through that at one point. So, as a good reader, I need to ask myself, why would the author choose this audience? Why would he choose to address both blacks and whites? I think that Du Bois chooses to speak to both black and white audiences, and this reveals the author's purpose because he wants to persuade both blacks and whites to change the current situation in America. So first we noted the pronouns and places where the audience was addressed, and then we asked, who is the author addressing? And then finally we asked, why would the author choose to address this audience? In this lesson, you have learned how to determine an author's purpose by considering his choice of audience.